Okay, so today what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk about two different lectures we have. One is the illusion of motion for screen-based media, and the other is the illusion of motion in print. And I think looking at these might even help inspire you if you don't have your arms around telling a story with line. So this Soft Lights typographic video, I don't know if I showed it to you. I think it's spooled so long that I couldn't show it to you. And Andrea says, no, I didn't. So then I didn't. Therefore, I didn't. But I would like to call attention to these photographs that were taken at the turn of the last century, the young man running. And this is just still photography that got captured for us now with cameras that have motor drives that can capture every millisecond of an image. Long ago, in the 1800s, I wouldn't even venture a guess on how they took that. I assumed that they just set up the camera and that kid kept, or man kept jumping endlessly. So they'd capture different shots of it, different snapshots of it. But the point is that you look at that image, that multiple image of that single figure, and you have a true feeling, even though it's a flat two-dimensional image. Because there's multiple frames superimposed one on the other, you have an image, you have the illusion of motion. And how to create motion in something that's two-dimensional and static is really important to get your arms around, which is particularly why I love these images by Robert Longo, which is trying to create an image that creates the illusion of movement. And in both these images, you have a sense of impact, right? You can feel the force of somebody being thrown back for some reason, and you can feel the force of somebody, let's say, falling backwards, right? Meaning you could either feel like on the one on the left maybe that you're a person who is standing in front of this man with a tie flying in the air, and you've shoved him or punched him or something, right, to create some kind of force. But this is still a two-dimensional image. I mean, if you start to look at it and you look at the shape and the movement and the form and the posture and so forth, you realize that this is all created on a flat surface, but you have an illusion of depth and space and a moment in time. And communicating that, again, as one of your graphic design elements, creating that illusion of movement and motion helps communicate a message. It creates a sense of urgency or an immediacy, or it creates a feeling of being in the moment. And I think it's actually really hard to pull off two-dimensionally. I really do. But one of the things you're doing in your telling a story with line, I'm assuming, is a lot of what goes on here. So let me see if, yeah, did it inspire you, that video? You know, what I love about that video, particularly at this point in the lecture, the reason why I thought maybe I showed it to you was because I thought maybe I showed it for typography, because that's originally why I captured it. Because obviously it's got type in there. It's got different ways of handling type. And then I love it at this point in the lecture because really what you're going to be doing with telling a story with line is think of all the line that you looked at in there and how they created words with it and they created the animation. But those were all still images. Those were all sequential still images. None of that was filmed as a movie. So it was a still, they moved a block, it was another still, they moved a block. And you now have all of the skills at your fingertips to create something exactly like that. You can place music or sound in InDesign, and you can create a movie. So let's hang on to that for a moment, and let me show you. Let me go to the next lecture regarding motion as well, which is motion for screen-based media. And again, you already now have all of the tools from InDesign and Illustrator and Photoshop on how to create motion for screen-based media. And if you look, for example, at the top, that was an animated GIF. You guys remember MySpace? Nobody does MySpace anymore, right?
Yeah.
So there are banners, the flashing banners at the head of like MySpace and so forth. So this is a public service announcement, which is when you're kind to others, it not only changes you, but it changes the world, which is, hopefully I work to live by that one. And I created this little banner actually when I was in graduate school and interviewed high school kids and asked them what acts of kindness they either experienced or did, and then took their little profile. And so it's just these flashing, rotating images and commentaries. And that's an animated GIF. Each one is a Photoshop file, each one is static. And just like in Teresa's midterm, where she showed you how to make an animation, that's what this is. And then here below, when I was in graduate school, one of my students, my peers, created this interactive exercise. And think of this in terms of Illustrator and InDesign. And you just click, so think in terms of Calder and buttons. So you click on the mermaid, actually you roll over on the mermaid, and there's two images for mermaid. One is mermaid without the pink on it, one is mermaid with the pink on it, right? You roll over it and you create an action. Then you click on it and you create a different action. Now, if you think about doing the Warhol interactive assignment, where you had text occur and something bounce, right? There you go. That's it. That's all there is to that one, right? The mermaid's bouncing behind the ocean. So the ocean is an image which sits in front of the mermaid, right? And that's it. Now if I roll over here to the sea monster, notice how it changes. So roll over, you give it an action, it's a button. You click on it, and again, it makes something happen in the portal in the center. So think of the mood that this designer created by creating a map that feels kind of vintage illustration, but yet it's used and it's talking about something kind of ancient and mythological. But the interactivity is very current. And I find this completely charming. So you can go to the website and play with this on your own, of course. I didn't do it.
No, what did she do it in?
He actually did it in Flash, but it's if you can draw it in Illustrator and build it in InDesign with putting, let's say, this ocean in front of this little sea monster, right? And having the sea monster be a separate image, so the clouds in the background, right? The ocean's in the foreground, and the sea monster is an image in a graphic box in between them. And that image just appears when you click here. It's a button. Click on that, image appears, and it's hidden until activated, right? You all remember that now, don't you? We've talked about that now so far. Is that ringing a bell for many? Yeah, Sam's nodding. Thank you. That's good. Same thing. Roll over on here, the image changes in InDesign. So this is a button. It's a rollover button. When you roll over the button, you add, you remove the pink. You click on it, and whatever is hidden until activated, and it's activated by clicking on this button, there's that sea monster which pops up, and then it has a second animation which appears and then bounces. And that is an automatic animation in InDesign, and you can control how long it plays, this is on a loop, bouncing, and it's on a slow loop because they changed the speed to slow, and they kept the bounce within a very small area. You all follow that? And that's all doable in InDesign. Now, who's to say that your portfolio isn't only on just one page like this, right? Who's to say that this isn't a possible way to create your portfolio where your images display in some kind of showcase frame, right? I mean, there's all different ways to do it. You have to think about what's authentic, obviously, to you and how you want to show it. But so you have all of these skills at your fingertips. You know how to draw, you know how to add textures, a map paper texture from your texture project. I mean, you guys, can you believe how much you do now, right? It's kind of thrilling, isn't it? To know that you actually could pull this off, right? At least it is to me. This one I love. I'm so charmed by this. I always get excited before I click on it, which is, how many of you have seen Catch Me If You Can, the movie? Okay, what I loved most about that movie, it was a fine movie. What I loved most about that movie, and Olivia, this is all for you because it's so 50s. It's is the what's it called? Not the opening credits. That's it. Thank you. So I'm going to pause this so we can. Okay, and then down below here, one of the things I discussed with you in your Telling a Story with Line is to be sure to storyboard your story, plan your frames, what it is you have to say, where's your title, your introduction, what's your beginning, your middle, and your end. And remember, telling a story with line is telling a story without words also. The only words you're going to use, the only text you're going to use would be in your title, for example. Okay? And that same artist that did that Sea Monster Mermaid did this storyboarding. He's actually a really fabulous artist. And one of the things I also want you to get a feel for when you look at the way that interactive mermaid sea story was, and also the rhythm, that little walking rhythm of Catch Me If You Can. It's busy, but it's not too fast. It doesn't scream past you, but it creates a moving pace. Consider all these elements. When you become familiar with screen-based terms, think about your storyline. What's your narrative? How are you telling the story? What's the sequence? How do you make it unfold? Are you going to have a little twist in your story? I mean, think of when you go to the movies or what you enjoy, how you can tell a story. And I do want to pull up another story for you, which isn't on this, but let me just finish going through here. Then how long do you show something before somebody gets bored or they saw the image? Or does it go on too fast or does it go on too slow? And how do you change the rhythm and the pacing of something? What's the tempo? And how do you sequence your images? How do they unfold? How do you consider the next frame and so forth? And then how do you use your graphic design elements actually based on these different concepts, the grouping of elements. Remember, unity, proximity to one another. The contrast of the elements, whether you have hard or soft or bright or mellow, or how you create a dimensionality, a depth to it by the contrast or the transparency of the images. And then just consider all your graphic design elements, how you line them up, how you created a sense of movement. All that type, remember how we converted our letter forms to outline? And then they had the type in the Catch Me If You Can, just have the lines grow out of the tops of the letters. Well, you could do that, obviously, from frame to frame. So that's why storyboarding is absolutely the most critical, honestly, because you have to think through what your intention is, where you are and where you want to head. Let me show you one more cute little story here, which is based on Shel Silverstein's book, children's story. It's called There's a Polar Bear in Our Refrigerator, which is an old-fashioned term also. And then remind me to show you there's a video called The Porcelain Unicorn. Has anybody seen this video? No. And it won an award for a short film. Have you seen it, John? The Porcelain Unicorn. It's charming. There's a story behind it, and it won an international award for how to tell a story, and it's maybe a 2-minute little video, but it tells this incredible story. So let me pause this again. So when you consider Teresa's little monster waving its hand, same animation. She showed you how to do it just like the polar bear just did. And then consider, let me just play this and turn the sound off. There. Consider what this would look like if they used typeset type instead of hand-drawn type. It wouldn't feel right, would it? Or all of us, I mean, maybe this isn't international, but didn't everybody play with refrigerator magnet letters as a kid? So it is international. Okay, good. So think how we immediately created an environment of this being a children's story by using something we relate to our childhood of using type with refrigerator magnets, right? It's all very charming. And then how things are timed, like the word scare wiggles and looks scary. And different type is scaled differently in order to create a greater importance. And then how would this look if it didn't have that little watercolor texture, like the color of ice? If it didn't have that soft blue watercolory texture, would it still be as effective? No. So that's why your job is to sketch and brainstorm and storyboard. Now, I'm going to pause this again and play the porcelain. Okay, so like I was saying, they didn't, for this story in 3 minutes, the story unfolded for us. They didn't just start by showing the scene of the kids playing in the house. They created tension, certainly with that music, right? Started out with that music. You already knew something ominous was going to happen just by the posture and the mystery in the box. Think about the mystery in the box, what's in the box. There's no words spoken. He goes up to the door. He hesitates before ringing the doorbell. So you're creating this drama and tension. And then they flash back to the kids. And this story unfolds and then brings it back to the present, how it started. So that's why you brainstorm it. You try to think of how to create tension. And I know we're talking about, well, for telling a story with line, we're talking about telling a story. But for everything we do, everything gets elevated when you create an element of surprise, when you create a feeling of something being a gift as it unfolds, as you open it and it reveals itself. It all feels like something special and elevated and a present. And that's really, even when you're doing your posters and your stories that are two-dimensional, all of it needs to have that same kind of feeling that you reveal something, even if it's laughter or silly or hysterical or doesn't have to be drama. But think about how in 3 minutes this story unfolded. And what I realized, now let me come back here for talking about interactivity, which is, let me take us back to our telling a story with line assignment. I know I kind of threw so much out there for all of you. It was unfair. I don't know how many of you saw my little email I sent, but the old website was really designed for the telling a story with line assignment in print. And last semester, what semester are we? We're spring, right? Last semester in fall was the first time I made everybody do it interactively. So I revamped this assignment link for all of you. How many of you went to this assignment link already and looked at it again? Okay, so I revamped this assignment link and I realized I really need feedback from you. So if I fail somewhere here, if I don't provide you with enough information or clarity or resources, email me so I can enhance it, because I only know what it's like. I know it might be in my head, but I don't know how it reads to you. So it would help me if you told me. But what I did was I gave you a link, for example, to storyboarding, because I know we really hadn't talked about it prior to today. And this is just, I think it's a high school blog website which shows different ways of storyboarding. And it's really just thumbnail sketches where you're writing notes to yourself on what your story and how it unfolds and how the scenes change. Depending on how long your narrative, your story is, will depend on how many frames or cells you have. It doesn't mean that you stop considering perspective and all the graphic design elements that you use for everything. It doesn't mean that you don't stop considering shape and unity and the scale of type for your headline and the colors and the textures and the pattern and the mood, and primarily, of course, the bottom line, what's the story you want to tell? What's your message? And you're going to have to sketch it out, and you have to consider how your story unfolds. Well, you might look at, I know we've looked at Andy Goldsworthy before, yes? Okay, so I won't take you too far into Andy Goldsworthy land, But Andy Goldsworthy has these stills, but he tells a story, and his story is his process. So what makes his art is the process and the fact that it gets documented. And so for you to reveal your story, so there, right there, the process of setting up a string of foxglove blossoms on top of ferns in the forest is certainly telling a story with line. It's that string of petals that somehow mysteriously got placed in this snaking form in nature. And if that was what you chose to do, if that's what your theme is, if yours is wilderness, maybe that's the story you want to tell. And then you have to think about how to communicate it. And what gives it a beginning, a middle, and an end? How does the story unfold? So, Andy Goldsworthy, one of the things he did was his videos. Then, let's see. You remember the dot and line story, so I'm not going to play that one again. I think we went back to it previously. Yeah.
I have a video that I made a while ago that kind of tells the story through line. Can I show it?
Right now?
Or whenever at the end of the class.
Love for you too. Love for you too.
It's like stop motion, but it kind of.
Can you pull it up from this computer? Then come on up here.
It's really quick. It just
Yeah.
kind of
Let me
feels
make
like
you a
run
new
over.
window. Yeah, pull it up. Love for you too.
Wait, it's somewhere along here. Hang on a second. That's not it. thing on Windows Movie Maker.
On Windows Movie Maker.
Yeah, I haven't used Mac before. To
Okay.
make videos.
Fabulous. Was that fabulous? That's a bravo, yeah? Thank you so much for that. That was fabulous. I'm standing up here going, okay, I'm going to go sit down now. I can't top that. There's no way. That was terrific. Well, you know, as I was thinking about this, telling a story with line, I think I had a different concept in my mind. I think I was more rigid about it. And then I realized that what feels most important to me is your interactivity that that you're able to work with here. And yes, telling a story with line. That's your key, the word line. That's the key you got to hang on to with this one. But I realized, I Googled, how do you make a movie in Photoshop? Because John made a tutorial for me using Photoshop. He took a bunch of still screenshots of Screencast-O-Matic, actually. It was a Vicky, this is how you do it, video. And he couldn't do it in Screencast because he was busy capturing Screencast as he worked, right? Why don't you describe it? Actually, why am I describing it? You did it.
This is in Photoshop 6.
Gotta stand near your little microphone here. Well, okay, it doesn't matter. It's still, just tell him to describe the process.
I just took screenshots of the process, and then I dropped the screenshots into layers in Photoshop and made a movie of it. The same way you will with your animated GIFs.
Okay, and then he added sound. Oh, you spoke. He spoke.
Right.
You spoke.
Yeah. I captured the sound with Audacity.
Yeah, and is that free, Audacity?
It's free. Yeah, it's open source.
Open source. Maybe I should find a link to Audacity. So he spoke a narrative in something called, bless you, in something called Audacity. And so I thought, okay, so John made me this movie, and it's actually incredibly cumbersome for you to put an animated GIF in InDesign. You have to convert it. It will not place in InDesign. It will not animate in InDesign. So that's when I started to think there's got to be a better way, and the more we know, the better off we are. So I Googled, how do you make a video using Photoshop? And anyway, are you girls with me back there? Okay. How do you make a video in Photoshop? Well, here's just 8 steps to do it, and all you really have to do is place your first frame, open your first frame of an image in Photoshop, and then follow these steps. And literally, it took seconds to create a Photoshop video. I, with my cell phone, with my iPhone, took a whole bunch of pictures of my daughter's dog and my dog playing, just little stills. I opened up the first photo in Photoshop, and then I followed these steps right here, which is I put them all in one folder, so they were all in one location. And then I opened the animation window and I brought in the images and they played out in layers. And when I exported it, I mean, Lori did this also. I exported it as a movie in Photoshop. It was so simple. It maybe took me 7 minutes.
So eventually you load all of those images.
Eventually what happens is, so here it just tells you, it says open your image. Open your first image in the sequence. And then a frame box appears under that animation window in Photoshop. And then you decide what your speed is, which we learned in the animated GIF that Therese taught us, how many frames per second you want. Oh, actually, no, let's, I don't want to demo it actually right now because it's so simple. Create many images, separate Photoshop files. They can be JPEGs. They're stills. Or you could do what Maddie did, for example, and you can snap a photo of your drawing and your little cutout, move it, snap, right? You all follow that? And then open the first image, because they're all going to be the same image size because you took a photo of them. And then what happens is you open Photoshop, click Open File, click on the first image, and the image sequence box, and the frame rate box will appear. And then there's a dialog box, and it says how fast do you want to do it, what's the speed, what's the size, and so forth. And literally, then it just brings everything in. It automates the whole thing, and then gives you a choice of how you want to export it.
Is this in Photoshop 5.5?
Yeah.
In 6, you can import movies.
Oh, in 6 you can import movies. Yeah, but it's in what we are working in now, which is in 5. And it was so simple, and then you save it as a movie, okay? So I thought, well, why can't you do that? Let's say you decide to do everything. Let's say you decide to go out and take a bunch of photos. Let's see how you can turn it to a movie. And then the advantage of this, to me, the advantage of this wasn't 1, 2, 3, I've got a movie. The advantage of this was then you can, let me close this up, you can come right back here and you can use this tutorial, which is how to place media in InDesign. So then you place the movie file in InDesign, and you can do all these other things around it as well. You could have your movie playing, and while your movie's playing, you could have things singing and dancing and animating around it. I also found this other, so point number 2 here in telling a story with line. Right here, if you click on this, there's something called a white paper. And a white paper essentially is just an intellectual or scholastic article. And in this case, it's on InDesign interactivity. And just about everything you need to know is in this article. Every objective, every skill on interactivity. And I was reading through it, scanning through it. It gives you loads of fabulous information on the size that you might want to make your document. It gives you great information on walking you through all the tools, the animation tools, and explains what they do. I mean, it's pretty thick. I mean, it's 18 pages, so it's dense, and I'm not sure that you have to read every detail depending on you. I leave that to you. But for example, right here, not on the buttons panel, there's a little sidebar on one of these I read. Not on this one, but I found it really interesting. Oh, on animation and timing. If you have an object and you apply an animation to it, like a bounce and swoosh, remember that I did with letters the other day? If you apply an animation to one object, you can only apply one. However, you can add a blank box around that animation that's invisible and add an animation to that blank box. So you can create, you all know what Russian nesting dolls are? Raise your hand if you don't know what it is. Okay, Russian nesting dolls. Russian nesting dolls are Russian dolls, and they're made out of wood, and they're about this, they're about this big, or they're about this big, and they're split in half. So you pull the head off, and there's a little doll inside it. You pull the head off of that. There's a smaller, and some of them are 3 dolls, and some of them I have a set because I think they're beautiful. I think it has 10 dolls, and they tell a story. My Russian, think about this. I didn't realize I was drawing from this, but my Russian nesting dolls are painted, and as you take a doll out, it tells a scene of a story. So every time you put a new doll down, it's a new scene in a story. Now let's say you decided that for your animation, you took Russian nesting dolls. You could go on the internet and find an unpainted Russian nesting doll image, and you could take an illustration of your own, and we've learned how to wrap an image, a 3-dimensional image, around something in Photoshop. So you could essentially create these Russian nesting dolls too, wrapping your images around them, telling your story. There's all, it's, you know, the limit is your imagination, right? Anyway, but through reading these sidebars in this white paper, I learned some interesting tips that helped me solve problems that had never occurred to me. So this is definitely worth scanning through. And now you have a document that explains all of the interactive elements to you. Also, let's see, don't forget that right here, if you click on interactive tutorial links, it's going to take you, hopefully, it's going to take you to all the portfolio interactive tutorial links. And so if you want to know how to do something, they are all here on the left side of the page. And there's all video narratives for you. And they're all less than 5 minutes. So they will walk you through the instruction. And then I also, of course, gave you some examples of students' work from last semester that were used for the Telling a Story with Line. And you probably haven't seen this one, This student spent so much time on it. So she did that same thing of stills, and she drew. Can't remember if hers started with telling a story with line or animated GIF, but I think she probably spent thousands of years on this one. I hope I didn't put the wrong one up there. Maybe I did.
I never finished playing at home, but I didn't,
Didn't play more than that?
uh-uh.
Oh, well, what it is,
didn't
I'll
know
have
why
to
you put it
I'll have
up.
to fix it. I'll have to fix it. What it is she drew the earth, and that's why I showed you her sketches, because I thought the sketch was charming. And she drew a line that built every building of every location around the earth. And then she filled them in with watercolor as she drew them, and she photographed every little step of her drawing. As she drew a little line, she snapped it. Drew a little line, snapped it, and colored it in, snapped it. So we watch her, we don't see her hand doing it, but we watch this line build. And I think she had well over 100 photographs defining it, and then built an animation out of it. It was beautiful. And I'll try and repost it. Actually, do you have a little patience? I'll pull it up for you if I can. I don't know if let me see if I can. Let me pause my little video. It was a lot of work for her. And then the other two, or the other three, I think I've shown you. While we're waiting for this to open, I do want to emphasize to all of you that you're going to have to pay close attention to the file formats with which you save everything and what you upload. So for example, if you're saving it as a movie for Telling a Story with Line, Lori spent her weekend practicing how to make a movie. And although my submission page right here, Telling a Story with Line, tells you to load an interactive PDF and a SWF and an HTML file, see that right there? If you're creating a movie only, you won't be able to create the interactive PDF or this. Actually, that's not correct. I'm going to correct myself right now. What you're going to have to do is place your movie media in InDesign in order to export the interactive PDF, SWF, and HTML file. So that's why I'd like you to come into class for lab time so we can troubleshoot all of this together. So let's look at, this is Matilda. This is the young woman who created the file. And just to cover herself, she was so funny. Here, Vicki, here's everything you can imagine that I did with this, right? So she's got all her links. She's got her Flash file that was generated for herself. By the way, if you create music, if you add music, you have to add the music file, the MP3 or 4 file for music. You have to add that in your links folder, and you have to submit it with your work. Otherwise, your music won't play. Like one of the students created a heartbeat. I think I showed you his example, but he didn't submit. He had a EKG sound, the beep, beep, beep. He didn't submit his MP3 file, so I can't play the music that he inserted into it. But let's see if we can look at Matilda's right here. Let's open it. Here we go. Let's see. Hopefully it should play right. So she created this by drawing and coloring and drawing and then taking snapshots of it. And she built this in InDesign. And I actually think at the time, try and think how she did it. She just added everyone as a page, and I think she set them to automatically play, automatically load and play. There's different ways to do it. You could do it as this. I think the easiest way to do it now would be this Photoshop movie file link I gave you. But her frames, there are, you know, countless frames. And you know that kind of roughness of the paper color changing and all that, you know, it's very hand-drawn and charming, and I find that charming. Do keep in mind that you're going to want to work in these as smaller file size. And then she had it play on loop. It's on loop, which is why it keeps repeating itself. Make sure that you don't make your file size, in this case, for the interactive files, unless you ultimately will print it. Don't make them 300 pixels per inch because they'll be humongous. Make them at 72 pixels per inch. Otherwise, you'll create a monster file that you'll never be able to play or load. Does everybody get that? Super important. If you decide that when you do your scans, like Maddie had all those beautiful scans of her illustrations for her movie, you might choose to photograph everything at high resolution or scan everything at high resolution, but then you're going to want to be sure to downsample down to 72 pixels per inch. Otherwise, you're going to have monster files and nothing will work. It'll bring your computer to its knees. Yeah.
I made the mistake of not zooming in or panning in on my illustration when I was taking pictures of it. So I ended up with like 100 photographs with my carpet around the edge. So I had to crop each photograph.
Right. So,
Like, make sure it's in the frame.
okay, so I'm going to repeat that for my little video here, which is make sure that when you're taking your snapshots, you might even choose to get, you don't even need a tripod. I mean, you don't need to buy a tripod. Set your camera in one specific location, perhaps, at a specific distance from a wall or the floor or something, and then put your artwork up in the same place at the same time so your lighting's consistent, and then just click your shutter without moving your camera, and you're going to create a more stationary feel. I mean, this little wiggle that's going on with Matilda, she probably had hers stationary, but that little bit of wiggle going on here is because you can't be that precise. And unless you're trying to be that precise, I mean, there's a certain charm about the primitiveness of that, the hand-drawn quality of it, which I think is really attractive. But that's if you choose to go this way. Again, if we come back to our assignment here, actually, if we go back to like the mermaid one, that was all created through illustration and all through digital files. So there's countless ways to go about approaching the telling a story with line. Yeah,
I
Olivia.
guess just to clarify, for the upload on this assignment, is it going to be, you want to do a zip folder?
You're going to do it. Thank you for
And
asking
that'll-
that.
That will be kind of your digital progress and what we normally submit, but then as well as the Swift file, or do you want us to somehow embed that interactive file within the PDF?
Well, that's a really excellent question. So for in the back, if you didn't hear that, I don't know if you heard it, but Olivia's question is, how do we submit our files? Are we going to take a folder and put all of our elements in it and zip the folder? And the answer for that will be yes, most likely. My guess is you're going to make your movie or your Flash file or your HTML file and your MP3 file if you add music or sound to it. It's all going to export. You're going to have to go, and I don't want to demo this today because I want you to use the rest of lecture time after we finish our 2 articles on the wall for 2-page layouts. But I want you to use the rest of the time to work in class on this and start developing your ideas and ask John and I questions regarding it. But when you export, when you save an InDesign document for interactivity, let's go back to here. You're going to have to study this. You've already done it with the Calder, right? You've already done it with the Warhol, because you're going to export your file as an interactive Swift file, right? Everybody's done that now for the exercises. And when you do that, you automatically generate an HTML document, automatically. So that gives you 2 files. It gives you your Swift and it gives you your HTML. If you choose to play music with it, you're going to package it the way you package everything, which will include your MP3 file, which will include your graphics. It'll include, if we look at Matilda's here, let's look back at the downloads folder. If we look here, when you package everything, you're going to end up getting right here a resources folder, which is going to put your Flash file in it. It's going to put your MP3 file in it for music if you choose. And it'll also supply you with an HTML file. If you, for example, just gave me your HTML file without a Swift file, I would see absolutely nothing. It would be like saying there's a picture that goes here, but I didn't give you the picture. okay? So you need all of these links. And for, yes, you need your narrative. Yes, you need your thumbnails in your PDF file. Yes, you need all of that. Your final question was, can I just export an interactive PDF file with my media that plays? And if that's how you choose to do it, you would handle it differently. You would handle the media. You would place the media in the PDF file. But then you'd still be exporting even your narrative. Even your narrative would have to have interactive designation. I think that's a little too confusing for this. So I wouldn't go there with it personally. I'd just separate out your narrative, and I would then focus on your interactive telling a story with line. And I would zip them all together. And by the way, just as an aside, for your portfolio, you do not have to keep track of your process. You do not have to turn in a narrative for your portfolio. That's not part of the grade for your portfolio. Your portfolio is you upload your resources and your links and your SWF and your HTML and so forth, and whoever sits down in front of the computer can play it so it sings and dances and does whatever it's supposed to do. And when we sit down and pull it up on the screen, nobody is supposed to stand over my shoulder and say, if you click that button, it will work. So if I can't figure that out when I look at your screen, or if it doesn't automatically play for me or tell me how to interact with it, then you haven't accomplished your task. Okay, does everybody get that too? All right. So let's come back to telling a story with line. Are there questions about it? I know it's super, super open-ended, and that's intentional. The main ongoing theme for it, of course, is line. You know, I put this poster in here which isn't interactive, mostly because I found it so completely charming for type. And I saw that yarn, and I thought, oh, you could just take that yarn and wrap up your type and document it, and there's your telling a story with line. So, you know, what's authentic to all of you is where you need to go with it.
I have more of a practical question.
Okay.
Is there a place on here that shows how to set up your InDesign document?
Yeah. Actually, it turns out there is.
Where is it?
Well, it's right here in that PDF file. When you open your InDesign documents, any InDesign document, let me launch InDesign while I'm
There we
talking
go.
to you.
That's what I'm doing.
Right. When you open an InDesign document, they have automatic defaults. So let me launch InDesign and show you. They have automatic defaults for web page size. And we're accustomed to working in inches, and now you're switching and you're going to be working in pixels, which is how web display is. So for example, if you're creating an interactive story, and most monitors, I don't know any that's not, most monitors are wide, not tall. So why would you create an interactive document that's tall and narrow when somebody's viewing it on something that's wide? So decide how big you want your page to be and plan it for how it's going to be viewed. Okay? And if you create an image in Photoshop and it's 72 pixels per inch and you view it at 100%, that's the size it's going to look when you're viewing your document. So if it's 2 inches small at 100% in Photoshop, that's how big your interactivity is. If you scale up something 2 inches in Photoshop that started at 2 inches and you scale it up, it's going to look horrible. It's going to be low resolution and not attractive. So here I am in InDesign. If I make my InDesign document, I'll go to New Document. And right here under page size, all of these numbers stand for pixels. And a large web page might be something like that size. Right now, if we open it, and that pink guideline is just a guideline. We're in InDesign. I'm going to change my toolbox to be two columns. Whoops, come back. Let's get rid of the guideline. That's the size of my screen right there. Okay?
Is that what we should be using?
That's your call.
984?
I leave that to you.
Is that the size? So each number gives you a different page size?
Well, each number will give you a different page size.
Okay.
So you decide what suits your layout.
So are we going to be able to come in on Wednesday, next Monday, and have time?
Monday you will present it.
Okay. Are we going to be able to have time to come in and ask questions?
On Wednesday?
Next?
Absolutely. That's why I'm giving you Wednesday.
So In this one, do you add pages like you do in any document?
On this one, you decide how you're going to pull it off. For example, you, Lori, created a movie.
Right.
And what you would do for your movie right now is you would change your interactive workspace in InDesign. You would go to Media. You would go right down here. You're going to have this little video, Lori, really. You go down to place a video or audio file right here under Media. You place it, and it's like placing a graphic.
Okay.
It's just that simple.
And
Let's
then
see what we have in here. Let's see if we have any. There's Swift files. You end up exporting a movie file, right?
I did.
Right. Here's the Life of a Tomato file, right? The one that I've shown you.
So you could do an animation in Photoshop and place it that way.
Correct.
And then I can
Correct. Not an animated GIF, though. The movie file, which is why I gave you that as a choice. Animated GIF will not work. However, there's a way to make an animated GIF if you want, but I'd save it for the next assignment for the animated GIF. Right. So you can make your movie, and
then you can bring in the InDesign stuff on top of it.
yes, you can animate your little heart out.
Okay.
Right. Exactly. Any other questions? Mostly, I say storyboard the heck. How many of you came in with storyboards and your thumbnail concepts? Okay. This is really time consuming, but it's because you're learning all this interactivity. Once you know what you want to accomplish, the best thing to do is say, I want to accomplish this, and then ask John or I to help you troubleshoot it. And actually, John and I are not the geniuses here. Each one of you is going to be a genius to the other. Like, we already know Maddie knows too much, so we're all going to hover around her, right? And John is the interactive king. He knows Flash. If you know Flash, please don't do this in Flash. How many of you do know Flash in here? Do you, Eugen? Please don't do it in Flash, even though you're going to want to. I want you to learn new tools, okay? You'll understand it because you know Flash. You'll understand timing and so forth. But the idea is to learn new tools. And then just remember what you've done all semester long in terms of sticking to your theme and your look and so forth. The relief here is that because it's animated and it's on a monitor, it's lower resolution. It's not high resolution. So you're going to work with quicker files, smaller files. Not smaller in size necessarily, but smaller in resolution. Any other questions? Yeah, Bobby.
On some of mine, I had it don't hide until animation, and when I was trying to do page change transitions, it showed up. Does when you create the actual Swift file, does that not show up?
Okay, so let me see if I understand you correctly. You had a variety of pages, so let me insert pages. I'm in InDesign. I'm going to insert 10 pages, okay? And, oops, one thing I forgot to do is turn off facing pages because you don't want them side by side, you want them consecutive. And right now, I'm just going to draw, I'm going to go to page 1. Let me take my swatch panel and tear it off here and go deep. Excuse me. And let me go back to page 1. In InDesign. Let me close this. And let me draw a rectangle and fill it with pink. And then let me copy my rectangle. Bless you. Copy it. I'm going to paste in place. That's a command. Edit, paste in place. Paste in place. Change the color. So Bailey's sitting here. She's in my previous class, and she's going, I know all about paste in place. Paste in place, I'm a professional at. See? There is overlap. Okay, let me not make this too tedious for all of you. And let me get rid of some of my pages. So when you're in InDesign and you want to get rid of pages, you go to the page panel, you hold your shift key down, you select all of them and just go to the trash and you delete them. Okay, so then what you said was you took all these pages and you added page transitions to them. Page transitions in InDesign are this. You can select all of your pages. I'm holding my shift key down and I've selected all of my pages in my page panel. There's excuse me, in the interactive palette, there's something called page transitions, and they're really kind of fun. And what happens is if you set something on automatic play, you can transition them to dissolve and change like the blinds, like when you change Louvelour's Louvelour, remember, you probably don't know the term Venetian blinds, but Louvelour is a term when you turn a wand and the blinds open and close. Let's just try blinds because that's kind of fun. And you can see how you can transition them. You can transition them horizontally or vertically. And you can change the speed of the blinds. So let's go medium. And then let's just save our file. So we should have, if I go to my page panel, we should have added transitions to all my pages, but I didn't. See that little symbol in the page panel on the bottom right? That's only that page it applied to. So let me come back here. Let me come to my page transitions, and let me see what it says here. If I run my mouse over it, it says apply to all spreads. So now if I go to my page panel, I have the page transitions between all my pages. So I'm going to save it right now. I'm going to save my document, and I'm going to just call this blinds. And I'll save it on the desktop. There we go. And then I'm going to have to export it for interactivity. So I'm going to go to export and look at my choices. And I'm not going to go to an interactive PDF. I'm going to try exporting it as a SWIFT file. And then I'm going to get a dialog box that comes up when I click save. And it says, what do I want to do? Do I want to select all of them? Yes, I want all of them. Do I want to create an HTML file automatically? Sure. Do I want to view it after exporting? You bet. Am I scaling it differently than what size I created it? Nope, 100% is great. The only thing I'm going to turn off is interactive page curl, and I'll show you what that does in a minute. It's just like those magazine pages on the internet that the corners curl when you click on them. I'll show you that in a second. And let's see what happens and see if we're answering your question. Okay? So what should happen is, with this, it should automatically transition and change. Oh no, I think I have to click on it. No, do I have to click on
Couldn't
it?
you have just done that in preview?
Could I have viewed it in preview? Yeah, but your question was how do you save it?
No, it was in the preview. It's like I had some pliers dropping down into a bucket. I told it not to see the pliers until the transition,
Hide until animated.
hide until animated. And when I viewed it in preview, it showed up.
Oh, you might have, sometimes what happens is you might have told it to do something before, and we would have to really kind of disassemble it and see if you had designated something to it. Like I said, you know, to be really honest with you, this is as much a learning curve for all of us because there's so many different ways to go about this. Also, when you preview, here's something that'll make you crazy. When you preview, make sure you select document mode to preview, not just page mode. Otherwise, it's going to only show that one single page. So if I go to document mode right here and I hit play, we should be able to see the transitions, and it's not working. See, this isn't good for a tutorial, is it? We should hit play and they should just automatically play, but maybe, oh, then you see you have to click. It won't automatically play. So it's not an automatic animation for page transition. You would have to create a button that says move to the next page, and because that page has a transition on it, you know what, let's try it. See, like I said, I'm winging it, just like you. I don't know. Let me make a round button. Let me fill my button with color. Here's my yellow weird button color. And let me make this a button by going to Window. I can go to Window, Interactive Buttons, or I could go to the panel right here on my right. Yeah, John?
Will that button work on a master page?
Yes, it will, and John knew that answer anyway. But you know, my problem with it being on a master page is that these rectangles are going to be in front of it, and if I put it on master page, it'll be behind it. But you know what? Let's do that. Let me cut it off. If I just hit cut, master page is this right here. If I click on a master page right now, I'm getting my right-hand master page. I hope it'll work.
You can put it on a layer in the master page.
No, I can just stick it in this bottom corner. So I'm going to edit, paste in place. Well, that didn't work either. Yeah, you see, that's why it's not going to work here. Because this is a spread, it's going to position it in the wrong spot. So let me do this. Let me make a new master page, which will be a single master page. I'm going to paste it in place on my master page B. I'm going to move it to the far right corner because down here I knew that that rectangle isn't going to show up. And I'm going to turn this into a button, window, interactive buttons. So you didn't know you were going to stay for all this, did you? Are we holding you up from everything?
Not too bad. I do have to check into the hotel later because we're going to do that. I'm doing
Oh, well, that's good. We'll be long out of here. Okay, button. So I made it a button down there by clicking on that. And it's a button on release. That's fine. And we're going to say, we're going to call this my next button because we're going to go to the next page. And we're going to give it an action. And we're going to go to the next page. Go to next page. There. All right. You understand that it's always a mystery to me when these things work also. All right. So we've done it. We've made the button. It's supposed to go to the next page. And what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to right now go to Window. And, oh, I have to do one more thing. These are all master page A. So I'm going to drag master page B on top of all these things. So the button shows up on all these pages. And master pages means whatever you put on a page shows up on every page and works on every page. And now if I go to page 1, there's my button. Page 2, there's my button, right? Okay, so there we go. So now if I go, let me just save this. And if I go to preview, so interactive preview, I'm on whole document mode, not just that one page right there. And I click play. Right? Let's make it bigger. And I click my button, I should get a page transition. Right? Did that solve your problem?
I hope so.
Okay. So, and I didn't tell it to loop. It stopped at the end. I probably could have told it to loop. Yeah, John?
You could have that button over the top of your rectangles also.
I could have the button over the top of my rectangles if I had created
Layer.
a layer.
On the
It's on a
master
layer
page.
above.
I'm not sure that's true. Let me see. So so John has me, so we're speculating now. So I'm on my page panel. I'm going to my master page with my button. Let me close my preview. I'm going to select my button, and I only have one layer. I'm going to cut my button, edit cut. I'm going to add a new layer above 1 because all of these rectangles are on layer 1. I'm going to paste in place my button on layer 2.
Because that B master is highlighted, you're adding a layer to your master page. Is that what
Correct. See, the master page is active. So let's do this.
Move it right over
Let me
the
show
middle.
you my change right here. There's Vicky's buttons. And John wants you to see it on top of my transition. That's what you want, right?
Right.
We want to see if it works. And because it's on a layer above it, which John's absolutely right, you can see it's working. See, right here. And then if I go to preview, and I can put it wherever I want, obviously. It's not the best place for a button, but nonetheless. So I'm in full document mode in the bottom right. I'm in play, so it's going to preview. I can click the center button and it changes. And the advantage of a master page is it's very stationary. So if you were creating, let's say, your portfolio with buttons, you're going to want to create those on a master page because you're going to want to create them once. And if you make a change on a master page, so if I go back here to my master page and I show Vicky's buttons, and it's bigger, and it's a color. And I changed my button color to whatever color we're going to call that. And I again go to Window, and I go to Interactive Preview. Select all my documents. Oh, all my document pages. Let's see. It's only see my master page. There we go. There. And if I wanted to change my page transitions right now, I can go, for example, to my page panel, and I can hold my Shift key down and select all the pages, go to page transitions, and change them into zoom in. Let's try that.
Can you have some page transition?
Can they be-
vertically and some transition
Yes.
horizontally lines?
So, for example, I can go to this page, make this one active, and this one's going to be lines. Whoops. Let me turn that off. So I'm on this one, and it's going to be horizontal. I'm on this one, and it's going to be dissolve. I'm going to be on this one, and it's going to be fade. This one is going to be split. I don't know what I'm on now. I'm on this one, split. There we go, blinds. Zoom in. And lastly, box. I don't know what they look like, so we'll find out. And we're going to go now to Window, Interactive, and Preview. Sometimes I have to really talk out loud to get this thing going in my brain. And I'm going to click on it. I'm going to hit play, so all document mode. So these are the different transitions. So think of how you can use these page transitions to tell your story too, right? Fun, right? All right. So, any other questions I can try and answer or wind my way through figuring out how to demo?
What if you don't want the button to show up on the first page?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
What if you put something on your master page that you don't want to appear on every page? Can you take it off of some pages but leave it on others?
Okay, so if, for example,
It wouldn't work like Vicky's buttons. What if you don't want Vicky's buttons to show up on it?
well, right, if I wanted an introductory page, let's say we did this, you know, one thing I could do is I could have my title that would appear and then disappear after it played. We could do that on a page, and I wouldn't need it to be a different page. I could just have that be on the layer here. So, for example, if I'm on page 1, so I'm on page 1
How do you get Vicky's buttons to not appear
on this one page.
Right, because that's on the master page.
It's on the master page. I could have a different master page. So I could take my master page B, and I could duplicate my master page B, which is now called master page C, and I can remove it, and I can make this a master page C. Did you see me drag it over from here to here?
Yeah.
And now I'm on this page, and it doesn't appear. Or I'm hitting undo, 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 back to where I was. On master page 1, I can do this. I can override all my master pages. So with the page active on the page panel, I can override master page items, which releases everything. Or on this page, I can click Shift and Command, and it releases that box, and I can delete it. But if I'm on all my other pages here, it still shows. So for example, the advantage of a master page, let's see. So
You did
I hit undo. Yeah, I hit Shift and I hit Command, and it released it. But the advantage here of releasing it is, so this page is Teresa's buttons. Shift Command release it. This is Sam's buttons. This page is Felipa's buttons. Did I spell it right? What are we on? This one is Josie's buttons. There. And you'll see, again, so now we go to Window Interactive Preview. And we're going to go to the whole document. So as we play, let me hit play. Teresa's buttons, Sam's buttons. But it's all in the identical same position. That's the advantage of a master page. It doesn't wiggle around. It's very stationary. So I can change the type, but it doesn't bounce around on the page. Does that help you? Any other questions cross your mind while we're randomly thinking of things? No? Okay. Then